right. So we have Andreas joining to Zero Electric.
Can you turn on your video?
We'll ask to start video and ask to unmute.
Yeah. Here he is.
So,
Andreas, how are you today?
Yeah, surprisingly good. Marvelous. We worried that we could hear you and you couldn't see us.
Okay.
So we have to get used to that modern technology. I have to Martin. I have an experience. You talked about a low-cost country. I've worked a lot abroad, and people were always offended being part of a low-cost country. So we made it. It's a best-cost country because you get the most for your value, and you bring a smile into the faces of Thai people, of Chinese people. If a German or U.S. American comes there and say, "Hey, that's a low-cost country," you offend them all, and you really upgrade them. You bring a smile in their face if you tell them, "Hey, that's a best-cost country."
Yeah, it's a good point. And Andreas, it's interesting. We tend to think low-cost country is the developing world, but we're living in a world now where in 10 years from now, right? China might be not the best cost country, right? You know what I mean? The world is evolving and changing, but I love that, right? Best cost country. Okay. Because
you talked at the end of the day, you talked about psychology towards investors, but if we don't do it on the other hand as well, make a marvelous job on the sources that we use in all aspects to our team, to our investors, to service providers. So we have to, in terms of being successful, we have to make everybody happy. And so throwing in a best cost country, you put a smile in their face and they feel really uplifted.
Yes, I agree with you. So
Uruguay is the best cost country. Marvelous. I hope Martin still heard that.
I like that. So, Andreas, just so everyone else knows, where are you calling from, sir?
Well, from Erfurt, Germany right now. So it's already in the afternoon here.
Excellent. Welcome. So the same process applies. You're going to pitch Mitch. And what we're going to do is... with the timer, I'm going to put it to 1 minute. Okay. And what I'll do is I'll start the timer the second you start talking. Okay. So Mitch will introduce you and I'll give him the full 1 minute, Mitch. I think I started a little bit early last time, so I'm getting better at this. I'm Mitch's official timekeeper today, so you can see it on my side. But Mitch, shall we start with his 1 minute pitch?
Yes, hey, I'm jumping in my elevator. Why don't you tell me what you're working on while we go up? So give me the 1 minute pitch.
Okay, my name is Andreas Pfeffer, and this is Hans. We convert commercial vehicles to an electric drive. We see that we have an urge, we have a need to get the world CO2 emission free, and transport has a huge effect on that. We focus on buses. There are 500,000 buses that need to be electrified in Europe until 2030. And we see that the manufacturers can only supply until 2030 roughly a fourth of that. And that's why converting is highly needed in order to bring down the CO2 emission in transport. We save for the operator about 1/3 of the money. We reduce the cost and we save per vehicle converted roughly 1 million kilogram of CO2 in a lifespan of 10 years. And now the 1 minute is over.
Okay.
So several things. You didn't tell us how much money you need to raise.
Okay.
Never, ever do a pitch without telling the investor that.
What is the best time to mention the money that we need?
When is the best time? I mean, it's...
Right at the beginning?
Yeah, Mitch, what's your preference, Mitch?
Well, okay, but remember, I'm a storyteller primarily, and so I think about it. It's at the right moment. it depends on how you're going to compose the story. I still do think that break it into 10 seconds that we were talking about with Martin is the right way to think about this. Your first 10 seconds is, here's what we do. We electrify bus fleets. There are 500,000 buses that need to be electrified over the course of the next 8 to 10 years. Simple. Then your next step is, how do we get to where we want to be? Well, we need to raise this much capital in order to address that opportunity. And if we address that opportunity, based on what you were saying a moment ago, we can deliver the following savings for customers, 33%, as well as the reduced emissions of X. You said it on a per vehicle basis. I didn't quite follow your carbon savings. So it wasn't simple enough. I would aggregate it to the largest number you possibly can and say, if we can do 500,000 buses, it's this much carbon, not on a per bus basis. Because, and this is true whether you're talking to an investor or talking to a consumer, don't make them do math.
Okay. One short question. Is this recorded so that we can look at it afterwards?
Sure.
Because it's so valuable.
That's what we're doing here. Yeah.
Want to run and listen to you.
Recording on this.
Okay, perfect. Then you get our full attention, and we only listen.
Yeah.
Your first 10 seconds is, we're electrifying municipal and private transportation fleets. We need to convert 500,000 of these over the course of the next decade in order to make the Paris climate goals. Bang. That's one. Two, in order to do that, well, actually, I would say we already have done X because you have revenue. So we have a team of this many people. We have generated this much revenue and converted this many buses. That's your proof point to what you do. Then you say, our opportunity is this much money, and we need to raise this much in order to get there. What do we need to do with that? That's where you can either address gaps in your team you need to fill, or what you're going to do with marketing and business development in order to achieve your revenue goals. And there you're at about 45 or 40 seconds, 50 seconds, and you can close with, this is, I'm excited to talk more. I think you have such an encapsulatable idea that you can just tell the story and invite them to join the mission.
Okay.
So Ash, what are your thoughts?
And again, Mitch and I are different, Andreas, but I like Mitch's bang on and his feedback. For me, I think when I look at the story arc, right? Remember, the Paris climate goals are important, but if you're talking to an impact investor, it's really important, right? So I know that you brought those components up. So when you have that 1 minute, because you ran out of time, again, one of the things that I wanted to understand was, how are you guys retrofitting? What's the secret sauce? Okay. So I'll tell you where my mind was when you were pitching. It's like, you look at the supply chain issues and challenges that the world has right now with automobiles in general. They might not know about buses, but it's difficult to get all these components. And there is a lot of lithium battery production. There's all this stuff happening. So it's like, okay, these German fellas, right? And we always think about German engineering. There's good stereotypes for Germans like you when you think about German engineering and automotive and stuff like that. We're like, okay, these guys, I want to know a little bit more about your background. You know what I mean? A little bit about, why are you guys the best people on the planet to do this? But I also wanted to understand how you had the cheat code, okay? The cheat code, the secret sauce to be able to take a bus and within a month, a week, 48 hours, right? And retrofit it, right? And I know that you came back to like the $1 million CO2 savings, right? Which again relates to the Paris climate. And again, the impact investor would love that, but you also talked about 1/3 the cost. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The 1/3 cost element that you talked about, cost savings. I wanted to understand the secret sauce again, how you're doing it. So this is a question I want you to answer now, if it's okay.
Yeah, I'd love to.
And why are you guys the best people on the planet to do this? Right? Those are two things.
our secret sauce is it's really a headache to reverse engineer software. And then at the end of the day, we need to take 96 people safe home on the road without, even if they hit an ice plug on the road, the vehicle should not turn right and hit the tree and kill a lot of people. So it's a real safety issue. And going back and reverse engineering vehicle controls, that is our secret sauce. It takes the best guys it used to take the best guys from Mr. Putin, really Secret Service guys. It takes excellent guys. Even the big automotive guys cannot reverse engineer their own software. The next generation of engineers came. So our secret sauce is really this reverse engineering of software, understanding ones and zeros and reverse engineer them back that our bus takes the people safe back home. The rest is then installing a battery, installing electric motor. That's all fine. But we are the best really in doing this 007 hacking.
So that's very specific and related to the bus fleet. So I think there's where you can link the initial statement of what we do. We electrify buses. To a lot of people think that's just a matter of putting in a new engine or drivetrain engine. Electric engine, but it's much more. You have to
it's software
in order for the bus to operate safely, and that's all you need to say.
Yeah.
In order for the bus to operate safely, you have to reverse engineer the software. Even manufacturers can't do that.
So, Andreas, sorry, so this is an important point, Andreas. Okay, when we do Q&A, right? It might be it's important. The examples that you give. It's important that you don't take the investor on a different path. Okay.
Yes.
So can you explain to me, because I asked about the secret sauce and you went to Putin's people. I didn't understand that. Can you explain why you brought that up as an example? Because when I think about Putin's men, I think about people that are going around, maybe not doing a worldly good. So what did they do?
Well, they got a Western technology and they also didn't understand it. And so a lot that they did in this communication, automotive engineering software is you send out one byte and it goes to 65 different control units. And you don't know which control unit is listening to this byte. You don't know it. It goes to the seat controller, it goes to the window controller, to the motor controller. You don't know which controller wants this byte. And the KGB guys, they found a way of understanding which control unit is listening, is reacting to this byte. And that is a secret. I mean, I shoot a byte and it could go to the windshield wiper or to the door, and you don't know it.
So this is too much information.
Okay. I wanted to understand his vehicle.
Here's the apocryphal story that relates it to something that maybe the investor knows, but I wouldn't do it in this part of the pitch. I might in conversation.
So Andreas, my suggestion.
Finish my point.
Yeah, please go.
Back in the 90s, financial services firms would sit at Kennedy and LaGuardia Airport. They're hiring people and wait for the last people to get off planes from Russia because they tended to be physicists who were leaving the country. They couldn't afford better seating, so they were at the back of the plane. They would buttonhole these people and hire them to be quants, and that's how they populated a lot of the quantified stock analyst positions they had back then, because they were looking for people like you're describing, people who had been in the business of hacking other people's stuff. So way too much information for that part of the conversation.
Yeah.
But that's the context. If you need a story to relate it to, the financial services firm was built on ex-Soviet physicists. We're doing the same thing, and we don't even need Putin's people. But that's, again, I think that's way too much.
Overkill.
Yeah. So, Andreas, like when I look at this, and it's coming back to the secret sauce, right? One way of approaching your pitch would be to introduce you and your team as people that have over 20, 30 years of experience in understanding and reverse engineering drivetrains, for instance. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, and through that journey, you've discovered your secret sauce, right? Your secret sauce is the ability to apply your methodology and reverse engineer and understand the mechanics of any motor vehicle. Okay. Especially buses.
Yeah.
And then the reason you're here today is because you've realized that with that knowledge, your secret sauce, and the easy and the demand and interest in electrification, okay, you are now sitting at a very important path. You are the gatekeeper for electrification for everybody else, okay? 1 out of every 5 cars sold today is now electric. But in order for everyone to hit those climate goals, we need to actually think differently, right? The reality is that your carbon footprint is much better if you just adjust the drivetrain and install batteries, okay?
Yeah.
Something that's very simple to you. And what you want to do now is go down the path and work with governments, work with, in the aftermarket, maybe even work with the people, the Volvos and the Mercedes and all the companies of the world that have already sold these things out, to be able to transform them. And you're able to do it at 1/3 the price it would cost to replace the vehicle. Okay.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, if I were to, the story arc again, Andreas, does that make sense? You know?
Yeah.
And part of this story arc is obviously then coming to an ask, right, Mitch? I forgot, how much money you need. But Andreas, the other thing around it is with your pitch, you want them to ask questions. And the first question should be, tell me more about how you know how to do this better than anyone else, Andreas. Do you know what I mean? Win them over. Like when you're giving them a pitch, plant a seed so you know a question's coming. Okay?
Yeah. Okay.
Tell me how you've done this, because we see it. You look at, we all know, we've all had exposure to public transit and buses, and you can go do it, right? That, I'm based out of Singapore and Toronto, and, the bus system, you see it. We see these buses all the time, right? You are going to be the one that electrifies it. You're the one that's going to be working with cities, municipalities, and making that happen. But the question, Andreas, is, I want to know more. Do you get what I'm saying? You want the person to lead in. And even if they don't invest in you, everyone should always ask, how have you figured this out? And how are you better than everyone else? So at least it's sinking in their mind, Andreas.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And we've talked in the past about the reason that being in Germany is both challenging and an advantage is it is one of the centers of bus manufacturing for the entire world. So I think, by pointing that out, then you leave open the question, well, how are you different from anybody else in Germany? And it's about how you craft the pitch to introduce their opportunity to ask those questions.
Yeah.
So tell them something that they can ask about more. You don't have to explain everything.
Yeah.
10 seconds, 10 seconds, 10 seconds, 10 seconds, and so forth.
Yeah.
Each one of them should encapsulate one idea so that at the end they have 5 or 6 possible questions to ask.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that make sense, Andreas, in terms of the story arc and some of the pieces that we would include? Right?
Yeah, it definitely does. We have been, Hans and me have been pitching already, and we were not with the pitch deck that we once sent to Mitch. We had next to zero feedback on that. So nobody called us. I was waiting on the phone. Nobody mailed us. That was one thing. So that's why why this is absolutely exciting for us to be here and get the real feedback. I don't want any, oh, we like the idea. I don't need that. We want to drill down exactly what's happening now.
Exactly.
It's superb. So, but there's one more question. We were always struggling whether we have to catch investors by the money they make, because it's a tremendous business. I've been in the automotive business and we made money, but this, I've never been in a project as good as this one on the financial terms. But then on the other hand, we have two aspects we talked about. Very easy to imagine is if the vehicle drives electric, it will not emit CO2. But another important factor is if you take all the efforts, if you have been to Detroit or have visited an automotive plant, how much resources is eaten up to produce new vehicles. That is a big chunk. And the question is whether we stress this environmental, sustainable aspect of our business in terms of production and all the resources, human and resources in terms of material and manufacturing, plus the CO2 saving by not burning diesel, plus the financial impact of the project.
So there's a lot of ins and outs to what you just said from the impact investor's perspective. An electric vehicle does emit CO2 as a scope 2 emission if the power was generated by diesel, for instance. So you can't say clear cut that your emissions free. But what you're talking about is the embodied carbon problem of newly manufactured stuff. And so you can say we will reduce the embodied carbon of the fleet. But now you're into, details that only an impact investor will begin to understand. I wouldn't put them in the 1 minute pitch. I would have that material ready to talk about and have some visuals that show the fleet as it is today, its carbon output and embodied footprint versus what it could be in 10 years if you're successful. And that's a slide for your longer form pitch. And maybe a slide.
I mean, Andreas, to add on to what Mitch is saying is you should know your audience, right? In this example, Mitch might be the impact investor, energy, green focused, and Ash might be just the money wanting, you know what I mean? Greedy money guy, right? From Singapore, for instance, right? You kind of, every pitch is different, right? Every pitch is different. It's always good to be able to be in a position where you can understand who you're speaking to, right? Know a little bit about their portfolio, what's interesting for them, right? But if I was pitching Mitch today, it would be completely on the green angle, right? And these are the thought process we have, right? Andreas, does that make sense?
Yeah, perfectly.
Not necessarily in great detail because, again, you have 1 minute here. And so imagine you were talking to Ash and I, he's financially focused and I'm impact focused. You could turn to me and quickly say, and there's a lot of embodied carbon benefits to discuss. I'd love to talk with you more about that. But Ash, to the point, we're going to make $3 billion. Yeah, right. It needs to come out. As we said to Martin, think of your pitch as a whole bunch of pieces that you put together based on the context of the conversation. So rehearse until it gets to become a modular thing in your mind that you can make in various ways.
Andreas, just the last point, if I may. When you give your elevator pitch, you kind of want to paint a picture that leaves them continually thinking about what you're doing. Okay. You finish with your ask, but when you leave, it's like, okay, you know what? I heard 20 pitches today. Andreas's was, there was something about what he's doing. And, you are somebody, and we love what you're doing. And I know Mitch has had a lot of fun working with you guys and as your mentor. But, Andreas, when I look at what you're doing, you are a complete disruptor in your industry. Okay. And that needs to come out, right? The idea that I could imagine that Mercedes might buy you, Volvo might buy you. Okay. Right. Just so that, they recognize that, see, in my eyes, Volvo and Mercedes and everyone is on this electrification path. Okay. they're still going to realize at some point in time that not everyone's going to buy electric buses. Is that correct?
Yep.
Why has Toyota taken so long? I mean, you're an expert. I'm just general knowledge. The reason why Toyota has taken so long, the world's biggest car company is Toyota, correct?
Yep.
The reason why they've taken so long to go electric is because they know in parts of the developing world, right, or best cost countries, right, Andreas? The best cost countries around the world, they don't have the infrastructure and they don't have the money to make any of this happen. Okay? When I look at what you're doing in the perfect world of the future, the higher cost countries, right, are going to buy new vehicles. Yeah. Okay, and they're going to have different ways of insuring them, monitoring them, and their lifetime value changes as well, Andreas. Right? Yeah. The lifetime value of a bus changes when it's electrified. Am I right, Andreas?
Yeah. Tremendously.
And when you come in, right, and you didn't bring that up in your pitch, by the way, okay, which I think is important, right? Because, but more importantly, where I'm trying to go, Andreas, is that the future needs to have you, right? A country is going to have a new fleet of electrified and hybrid, which is what they have now, and then modified electric, right? Modified electric, which is who you are. Yeah. And you are going to power all the modified electric vehicles around the world, okay? And Mercedes and Volvo and all these people need to know that you exist, need to know these elements, and they need to buy you, Andreas. You need to sell to them, right? But that's kind of the big picture, the story of the future that's going to be had, right? Is what I'm saying make sense to you, Andreas?
Absolutely. I'm 100% with you, and that's how we experience it. We've talked to MAN this week, last week, and they say we don't have time for it. We see that what you're doing is needed, but we will keep an eye on you, and then we'll buy you in 3 years. What's the problem?
Sure. Yeah.
That's the company. But what you're talking to is the investor who wants to finance you so that you get acquired by that company.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, Andreas, you didn't bring that up in your pitch, but that's kind of what you're trying to do. Does that make sense? Yeah. You are the gatekeeper for modified electric. Okay. Yeah. Electric, hybrid, dirty gas, but the bigger one in the middle, the best value prop is modified electric. Yeah. Right? And that's kind of where I would be going with this. And that's a huge, you know what I mean? And I want them to leave being like, oh my God, I want to be associated with Andreas. I know he's, you know what I mean? It seems like these guys are going to win or they're going to die trying. And it makes sense to me, right?
Yeah. And actually, I think that of this pitch should be, and our exit strategy is to be acquired by one of the major manufacturers because they're going to need us.
Yes.
We'll chase them.
Yes. Yeah. Right? Add it to it.
Don't say you'll chase them. They'll come running.
Okay. Yeah. Yes.
Right? But
they'll come running. Okay.
It presents that clear path. But Andreas, what I'm trying to say is you are an industry creator. Does that make sense? You're this. I just came up this word modified electric. Okay. I don't know if that rings a bell to you from a European perspective, but for me and Mitch, Mitch, if I said that you had a modified electric vehicle, you know what it is, right, Mitch? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So from a North American, because Mitch and I are Canadian and American, that makes perfect sense to me. You're going to own that space. Okay. Yeah. A modified electric space for buses and maybe trucks and all the other components that come from it. So I want that to come out, Andreas. Right? It needs to come out. And, once you get to that point, you'll see the investor lean in. Because they're like, oh my God, this guy is on to something that, and so that's my view, right? I want that to come out and it's not right now, right? So we want to hear your pitch again, right? And love what you're doing. Lots of interesting touch points on this. But hopefully you found value in today's conversation, Andreas.
For sure. That's exactly what we need. It's we strive to get better every day in all aspects, and engineers are somewhat not very communicative. So we need to learn a little bit and improve on that side as well.
That's why we're here, sir, right? That's why we're here. And so thank you very much. And look forward to your evolution of this as part of
thank you very much. We enjoyed it very much.
Yes,
Okay.
Have a wonderful day.
Okay.